As my Torah this week, I'd like to share a personal story with you. When I was a high school student myself, my grandfather and grandmother decided to take me on somewhat of a heritage trip to Italy, where my grandfather was born and raised and was hidden by an amazing non-Jewish family during World War II at great risk to themselves. One of the days that we spent actually was my grandfather returning to the small village where this family lived and where he lived in their home for these war years. And he was very disappointed, although he was able to show me a lot of the village that had remained the same, that the building where he had lived had actually been torn down and rebuilt. While we were there, in an absolutely amazing occurrence, um, it happened to be that the family that had saved him during the war still had a child living in the same building, even though it had been redone. And that child, in the few moments my grandfather was there over the course of some 20 odd years, happened to not only come at that moment, but recognize my grandfather after having not seen him for so many years, and who my grandfather had fallen out of touch with. Now, this was an amazing sight to see. You can only imagine people being reunited after so long, and people with such a special connection to each other. And that's not where the story ended. My grandfather decided that he felt it, he felt responsible that he should at the very least get them some significant acknowledgement for the amazing things that they did and for the number of times that they risked their lives in order to save my grandfather and my great grandmother who was with him during that time period. And as a result, he worked very, very hard, gathering evidence and submitting evidence to Yad Vashem to have this family named Hasidei Umot HaOlam Righteous Gentiles, and to get, to some degree, recognized for what they did. And in fact, after three and a bit years, when I was in yeshiva in Israel, my grandfather let me know, and my parents as well, that there was going to be a special ceremony in Italy, in this small village where he had been saved, to acknowledge the people of the village, to acknowledge the people that had saved him, and to thank them all. And that me being in Israel, both having been present at this amazing first story that happened, but also being rather close by and as the eldest grandchild, it would be nice if I would be able to come, and I felt so as well. Now, knowing that I was in yeshiva at the time, and some yeshivas are not always so generous when it comes to leaving during what we call the Zman, during the regular learning schedule, so I was somewhat, nervous if I might have some pushback when I told them I was going to take a few days off to go to Italy, even though this was, of course, something that was absolutely necessary and important to me. And the Dvar Torah that I'll share is one that my mashgiach, Rabbi Fishman at Tomo, when I approached him, he told me the following. I said, would it be okay if I went for a couple of days to go and attend this ceremony, and then I would come right back to yeshiva? And he said, well, there's a pasuk in Parshat Ki Teitzei, this week's parsha, which tells us that the nations of Ammon and Moab are never permitted to marry into the Jewish people. An Ammonite or Moabite, male, as we learn as Chazal tell us, as we learn from the story of Boaz and Ruth, but those people may never marry the Jewish people, and the Torah gives two reasons, one of which is a lot easier to understand than the other. The easy reason is that Moab, and Ammon with them to some degree, hired Bilam to curse the Jewish people and wipe them out, and that's obviously, to some degree, not something that we appreciate very much, and therefore we shouldn't marry them. But the other reason, in fact, given first by the Torah, is the reason why you cannot marry the Ammonites and Moabites is because they didn't offer you bread and water when you left Egypt. And that one's very hard to understand. It's true, it would have been very nice if they would have offered us bread and water, but to not ever marry them because they didn't offer us bread and water when we left Egypt? What kind of reason is that? And my mashgiach explained that it's very simple. Ammon and Moab are descendants of Lot, who Abraham did many favors for and who saved on a number of occasions. That being the case, said the mashgiach, the Torah is telling us that the least we could expect of Lot's descendants is that when we were fleeing Egypt, they would come forth, offer us a little bit of bread, a little bit of water. But since Lot's descendants, Ammon and Moab, were unable to even offer that, they showed that they do not have the proper appreciation for people who have saved them in the past. They do not show the proper Hakarat Hatov, and that, explained by Mashgiach, is why it's just simply impossible for the Jewish people who hold this in such high regard, who are always all about Hakarat Hatov and for thanking people and for honoring people and for paying back people who have done wonderful things for them. They're just incompatible. Jewish people are incompatible with Ammon and Moab, since Ammon and Moab can't show the proper Hakarat Hatov. And therefore, concludes my Mashiach in a lesson that we can all take towards our Hakarat Hatov. I'm not allowing you to go. You have to go to this event. Have a wonderful Shabbos.